Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Hey,
I can't hear you. I think you're still on mute.
you can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Nothing.
Okay, I will leave and come back.
It's Mercury retrograde, so all this stuff is not working well. Now I can't see you at all. You're gone. Bye-bye. 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 Goodbye, broccoli. Goodbye, television. Thank you for your time. We
Is it
so
me?
enjoyed it. I
Are we
can't hear
there?
you.
You can't hear me.
Womp, womp, womp.
Why is that? Okay, how may I help you, honey? I'm in a meeting
Let's
right now.
hold on one second. Let me check. Oh, this is why. Hold on. This is why.
I don't have.
I'm
You
figuring it
want
out
my
as we
iPad?
speak. Okay, can I hear you now? Say something.
Hey-o.
It was my side. I'm so sorry. I didn't
It's okay. That's okay. Now, Amy, I'm in a
know.
meeting. Okay. At 1:30, you go to class. Okay. It's on the chair. Okay. Hey.
So I wanted to ask you a quick question before I forget. I know, and I'm only asking out of courtesy. If it doesn't matter, it's okay. But I realize the last few times you've done this, you've had the responsibility of making sure these kids are going to school. I'm sure this is difficult to kind of manage this. I wanted to let you know that my day has opened up. I used to have a regular Wednesday was my day for regular meetings, and one of my regular meetings is no longer a regular meeting, which means that I can do this earlier in the day now if it works for you.
That is good to know. I would have to check with my. What do you mean by earlier in the day?
Well, I'm looking at it right now. I still have a standing I have an 8:30 that goes from 8:30 to 10 usually. So I could realistically be ready as early as 10:30.
I teach a Hebrew class until 11.
Okay, so 11.
That might work out.
How about 11, like 15?
Yeah.
So we'll move it up to 11:15 for next weekend. I'll send you a reminder on Tuesday.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. Good job.
Let's see how
And
it goes.
I like that we're back in the backyard again.
Yeah, me too. It was a period where it was just so hot. I felt like I was passing out, and I'm like, I can't do it.
Nice.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
before we get moving here, I got a couple of things. Cool.
Yeah.
So first of all, good to see you.
Good to see you. How was the golfing?
Oh, so your prayer worked for sure. I mean, not even kidding when I say it, but the first line being about my hands when I was going into it with this hand being bruised here, I consequently stabbed myself with this pencil. But all of this and then the whole this whole thing, and it was just like it was bruised, so it wasn't healing fast. It's a part of my body that I'm constantly moving, so I can't even put it really at rest. And I swear that after your prayer, I mean, I went to go hit some balls maybe 15 minutes later, and by the time I got out there, I didn't have anything on my hand. It was really remarkable.
God be praised.
But in addition to that, I played pretty well. Saturday, me and Ermeling were partners on this one.
Nice.
Did he tell you?
No, he didn't.
Tell you? Well, you could talk to him about it if you're interested. He played really well. I was very impressed with him. He had never played a competitive round of golf before. He entrusted me to be his partner for that first round. He came out, and I'm going to tell you something. You want to know the best thing about Ryan Ermeling? He delivers. Ryan Ermeling delivers. He always does. And he had some spectacular shots that were great for him. It really buoyed his confidence level. I played really well. We were tied for third after day one. And it was all different formats. Like the golf wasn't regular stroke play. They were doing, I don't know how much you know about the games that they play in golf, but I actually didn't really know too much about them, and I've been playing my whole life. But it wasn't like straight golf. It was team golf. So it was really a lot of fun, different format. We're tied for third going into the second day. It's a 2-day tournament. And we're one under-ish, probably maybe even a little bit more after the third hole. We're standing on the fourth tee, and I get whacked. A line drive, somebody hit me in the leg with a ball off the ninth tee, took me down. When it hit me, it took me right down to the floor. It hit me in the shin, right on the bone. So I got a fractured bone. I had a huge knot on it, man. It was like a freaking ping pong. And it took me down, you know, and it was funny because going into it, I've been talking with my buddy Vince, who I really think that he, you know, maybe even at some point having him come on as a guest and just do a guest spot with him. I would love for the two of you to start getting real nerdy with the Bible. I think it could be. I mean, I told him today, I go, I didn't know you were such a nerd for Jesus. He's like, I am a nerd for Jesus. He's like, I'm a nerd for the Bible, a nerd for Jesus. I'm like, well, that's a great thing to be a nerd at. But anyhow, I was saying it to him, and he was telling me about, you know, we've touched upon it too, because sometimes he'll say something that sparks me, and then I ask you. But, you know, he's really been pounding in about how, you know, the angels and God and Jesus and how, you know, they live on different planes. We all live on different planes, the spirit world. I think we touched upon that in one of our videos, the last one, I think it was. And so it's becoming more obvious to me now what this is really about. Like, I'm starting to get it more and more. I'm starting to understand why, like answering really abstract questions that I've had, you know, like how can God hear my prayers when he's not here, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And so I think future topics, and that was what I was kind of going into with this. I got a little short list here of some future topics, but I think what we should do is maybe ping off these future topics with some like one-offs, like what you did in the last week with the ghost. You know, like I think you need to give a little bit more, especially when you tease us the way you teased us in the last one. You gave us way too much tease and not enough meat, but that'll be good. It'll be good for this video. Hopefully you'll tie it up. But maybe we'll do this like maybe a 3 or 4 minute on one of these shoot one-off topics, and see if the promo gets any legs. If you get a lot of views on it, then we'll shoot another one. So we'll kind of look at what our views are and see where the interest is. You know, that one lady, I need you, by the way, I need you to jump on the YouTube page and comment on our video. There's been two comments in the last couple of days on our videos.
Okay.
Both, I think, from the same person. Sounds like a lady. I don't know if I'm reading it properly or not. You might know her. I don't.
Okay.
But she's been interacting, and a way to get more traffic, what do they call it? Grassroots traffic, is to respond and interact with those. It bumps you up higher on the search for these things. So even the smallest interactions show that it has, like, that's how the algorithms work. So the more you can get in, tell all your friends to get in and start commenting on it, all the people in the office, have Pastor Craig stop in, or Mr. Rosso stop in and drop a comment on the video or something. You know what I'm trying to say? Like, the more that happens, the more this goes. So let's use these. But today, I can't wait to hear. Oh, let's get into it. Are we good?
I'm good.
Next week, 11:15 a.m. I'll remind you.
Okay, here we go.
All right, we're going to get into this. This is going to be ghosts. Hold on. I got a new pad, and I don't want to run in for the other one.
Wait. Are we doing the leadership one?
Oh, yeah, we're doing the leadership one, right? Because we already got the ghosts. Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
So this is a leadership series.
And we're doing the second one first. We're doing Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus.
Yep. Okay, did you get any answer on whether or not they can blast out when I post this new video, hopefully later today?
Yep, they can do that right away.
Okay, so let me get it up and everything first.
Okay.
Because now we got 2 for the Halloween series, and let's see if we can blast them both.
Okay.
If we can get some people interested. The people I'm talking to it about seem interested, so now we just got to get them to watch the videos. Okay, leadership series, October 21st, 2020, take 1. So, Pastor Bob, in your first video that a lot of people probably just got done watching before coming to this video, you drop a bomb on us, and you share with us these qualities in the leadership series, these qualities of leaders. And the topic really became, you know, the leaders that we have right now, the people that are, you know, are running for office and trying to represent, you know, human rights and all the things that are important to people. You know, the question came up to look into the Bible and what does it say? And man, you dropped a bombshell on us in that last video, and you left us hanging with a couple of really interesting dudes. Four of them to be exact, a handful, but two that I think we're going to focus on today, and I can't wait. So why don't you take over?
So the first ones I want to start with are the last two I mentioned in the last video, which is the non-Israelite, the non-believing leaders, while God's people were living as exiles away from their land. The exile is when God's people had forgotten about him. They had mistreated their relationship with God, and they were abusing not just their relationship with God, but they began abusing each other. And they took for granted a great many things that God had given them. So God allows them to be taken away from their homeland. Very painful episode. First, Israel was destroyed in the north by the Assyrians, and then Judah and Jerusalem itself was destroyed by King Nebuchadnezzar, who was a Babylonian king. The Assyrians, who came first and took God's people away, the way that the Assyrians built an empire is they would destroy everything and everybody and then just take all your cool stuff and say, haha, we won. The Nebuchadnezzar was a new kind of empire. The Babylonian Empire would come in and they would destroy all of your military capability. So all your defenses and ammunitions and everything. And then what they would do is they would take all of your smart, intelligent, cultured people and things, all of your science and medical technology and political technology and religious technology and people, they would take all that back to Babylon. And they did that to enrich their empire, but also to try and assimilate all of the world's best everything into one place. And so basically like Google.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really remarkable. I had no idea that existed back in
Yeah.
the day.
So then they would rule the places that they conquered. You know, they would leave all the non-cool people or the people who weren't very popular or rich. They would leave them, but all the great people they would take. Well, the empire after them, which is Cyrus, is the Persian or the Medo-Persian Empire. He didn't like the nightmare of having everybody in one spot. And so what he did is he said, how about all you go back to where you came from, and I'll still rule you, but I'll rule you through a hierarchy or an administrative kind of empire. So lots of rules, lots of laws, lots of taxation, lots of appointed officials. And so really what you're seeing in Nebuchadnezzar and Cyrus is a shift in how the world did the empire business. And Nebuchadnezzar was the first. Nebuchadnezzar, the first leadership quality that we need to focus in on about Nebuchadnezzar is this. Nebuchadnezzar was sent by God. Now, the crazy thing about that is Nebuchadnezzar doesn't even worship God. He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't follow God. He worships a god called Nebu. He is, by everything on paper, he is an enemy of God's people, not just politically, but he's also, people would look at him and say, he's a non-believer. But this was who God sent. And Jeremiah gets really serious about this. It's Jeremiah 25:9, when Jeremiah says, behold, I will send and take all the families of the north and Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, my servant. God calls the king of Babylon my servant. And so here's the first thing we need to learn. No matter who is elected into office, we need to be able to say that this is who God wanted in leadership. And we have to live in humility under that. And that's a really, really, really hard lesson, because everybody wants King David to be their king. But sometimes God sends the king of Babylon. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what a great I don't know if it's even a simile, but just what a great metaphor, I guess, for where we are right now.
Yeah.
You know, Sirius versus Nebuchadnezzar, and you said they came in succession.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about Nebuchadnezzar first, then we'll go to Cyrus, who comes after that.
And you said Nebuchadnezzar prayed to a god called what?
Nebu.
Is that the sushi joint?
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
that's his. The first part of his name is also the name of his false god, right?
right.
So
It's pretty interesting. Watch the
it's pretty
brown
wild.
rice. So tell us a little bit about, you said you're going to start with Nebuchadnezzar?
Yeah, yeah. So I want
Okay,
to go through a
cool.
couple points with him, if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hear more about him.
Okay, and so the second thing I think that's important is Nebuchadnezzar was a king who had a vision and who had dreams for the empire that went past his own lifetime. So Nebuchadnezzar planned long. He didn't plan on his term. He didn't even plan on his life. He made plans and he seeded plans and he had vision and dream for plans that went beyond his own life. He wanted to see his leadership legacy last more than just his reign, which was really the problem with a bunch of kings who came before him. They only planned on their own reign. And so a positive leadership quality we can get from Nebuchadnezzar is here's a guy who had big vision. And I think that that's important in a leader is they have to be somebody who's not just trying to do what's best for them while they're in office, but somebody who wants the best long range vision, plan, dream that goes even beyond them. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the third thing goes together with the fourth thing. The third thing, Nebuchadnezzar, he gave lip service to God, and he wasn't totally devoted to him. So, for instance, in the story of Daniel and Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, or Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, he says in Daniel chapter 2, verse 28, when he sees what happens with Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, he says, listen, your God is the God of heaven. And so he pays lip service to God. He has the ability to identify that God is powerful. But really, the fourth thing that's important about Nebuchadnezzar is that even though he was able to acknowledge that God is God, and he was willing to say that Yahweh God is the true God. The fourth thing that's really important is that eventually he was humble enough to say that God was his God. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Here's
I'm trying to figure out how does that play in here? What's the assimilation here? What's the connection here? As it is.
Now this might get really heated, and so I'm about to hit the trigger button. Right, so you ready for this?
Yeah, hit it.
All right. So there might be people who are running for office in the United States who pay lip service to being a Christian. And they may say, oh, yeah, I believe in God, right? And that's good enough for us to say, at least you can acknowledge that God is God. But the fourth most important quality of a leader is that it has to be somebody who not just pays lip service, but in humility can acknowledge that God is God. And so it's not enough that they just say, oh, yeah, I'm totally a Christian. You know, I love going to church. The music's incredible. And I love the smoke machine, you know. It has to be, you know.
Wait, we have a smoke machine?
Yeah,
Hold up.
yeah, I know they have a smoke machine in church. I've
Back
been
up.
waiting for it. But the fourth most important quality is that they're not just somebody who can acknowledge that God is God, but that they can live in humility in front of him as well. And Nebuchadnezzar took pride in everything that he had, and God brought him low. He humbled him. He suffered terribly from an episode, I guess you could call it. He kind of lost his mind. And then after that episode, when he was delivered from that affliction, he acknowledged that listen, I have been proud and I've been arrogant and I thought I was cool, but listen, there's only one great person, and that is God. And I live under his blessing if he would bless me. And so we start out with Nebuchadnezzar being non-Christian, and then the story ends with him converting to Christianity. And so it's a very powerful kind of episode there.
Well, we certainly see a lack of humility out there right now in so many different areas. it seems to be a more and more common than uncommon trait that I see is pretty prevalent. I read something interesting that kind of goes right in with this the other day. A guy that I follow online made a comment. He said, when did it become that envy, which was seriously previously one of the seven, considered one of the seven deadly sins, and it shows up in the Ten Commandments and all over the place. When did envy,
Brad Pitt's movies,
become the popular way of thinking through these mediums of I think it was social injustice was what the guy said, and it was just an eye-opener kind of a comment to even hear, to kind of see, and then have you talk about Nebuchadnezzar, but the interesting part was that you said he was brought by God. He was brought by God, even though at the beginning he was a non-believer, he was still sent by God. And I guess that gives us a little bit of hope that hopefully, no matter what happens here in a couple of weeks, that person will be sent by God as well, even though, like you said, the packaging didn't fit. So go ahead, tell us about the rest.
Well, I just want to touch on what you said because I think you're hitting it. Even St. Paul in Romans 13, he said, St. Paul said, listen, obey your authorities and respect them and pray for them. Now, what's nuts about that is that Paul is talking about the Roman emperor who is currently persecuting him and imprisoning him. So Paul is talking about somebody who doesn't worship God in Christ. He's not religiously aligned with him. And Paul says, and people are probably saying, hey, what about this emperor guy? What should we do? Should we, give him the knife or something like that? And Paul says, oh, no, respect him. Pray for him. And that must have been such a shock to everybody, because the easy thing would be to say, don't listen to him, don't respect them. And St. Paul says, no, pray for these people. And I think one of the things that can be kind of disturbing is I think in America, we've reduced Christianity in the political world to just one issue, which is abortion, right? And so that becomes the litmus test as to whether or not a candidate is Christian or not, is where are they on the pro-life, pro-choice debate. And so we've narrowed it all down saying, well, if they're against abortion, then they're Christian, and therefore you should vote for them. But that's true that, God honors life, and that abortion is an issue that the church needs to continue to press into. But that is not the only thing that makes a person a Christian. It's a big issue, but there's more to Christianity than just a pundit issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but what I have a question for you on that then is if it's more than just that, but people are focused on just that, then how does the rest of it come into play, or how could it come into play then when there's such a movement against glorifying only one portion of this, and this kind of being, if you will, the de facto definition in this regard, and then how does that play into what happens at the election boxes?
I think that it's important for Christians when they're at the election boxes is to hold on to important issues. So there is that important issue. Wow, you are totally silhouetted that right there. You look like a government protected person. It was hilarious. Yeah, wait there. Oh, you almost had it again. That was hilarious. We should get a voice thing to make your voice all scratchy or something like that. Anyways, to remember that as a Christian, when you're going to the polls, that you're going with more than just one issue, that you're going with more than just one position, that you're going with your full Christianity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, very well done.
Now, Cyrus, are you ready?
I'm ready for Cyrus.
Cyrus, we learn a lot about him in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah, great books of the Bible. He is a different kind of king. He is a different kind of ruler, not just because he represents the union of two massive empires, the Medo and the Persian empires. So historically, he is kind of a really interesting kind of character. And in fact, there's a historian, a Greek historian called Xenophon. Say that 15 times fast. Xenophon sounds like there's something like you see a commercial for that comes with like, do not take Xenophon if you're, you know what I mean? It's even spelled like that. It's spelled Xenophon. Xenophon.
Wow.
Yeah, cool guy.
Yeah.
And he wrote about Cyrus, and Cyrus was a guy who had a whole bunch of people who followed him, and they followed him because he wasn't a selfish ruler. And that made him admirable. He was like the lieutenant who would be out on the front lines with you. In fact, that's what he did sometimes, especially with his father Cambyses. And so Cyrus was a man filled with integrity. And when people looked to him, they said, here's a guy who's not motivated by selfish greed or gain. And so he wasn't just a leader making decisions. He had a following. And I think he had a following because he had integrity. And so what you got to do is you got to look at the leaders and you have to say, is this a person of integrity? Now, again, this is what's wild. Cyrus, like Nebuchadnezzar, is a non-Israelite, right? And so if you're having to choose between two bad options, maybe one of the ways that you can kind of clear the forest from the trees is you could say, okay, I got a couple of options here. I don't like either of them, but does this guy have integrity? Is he like Cyrus? Are people following him because he backs up what he says, you know? Or are people voting for this person because it just helps their bottom line? And that's really selfish. Like, he makes a promise that says, I can, you know, line your pockets with gold or something like that. I mean, don't vote for the guy just because of that. You know what I mean? Vote for a guy who has integrity. The second thing that Cyrus does, and Xenophon goes into this a whole bunch, is that Cyrus always delivered on the promises that he made. He always delivered on the promises that he made. He never made a promise that he did not follow up on, which means that in a way, he didn't make promises in the wind just to get elected.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it also means that he didn't make many promises.
Well, but that's important because it's trust.
Yeah, that's right. You said trust. That's very good because he was known as a truth teller. All right. And so, for instance, in the Bible, when Cyrus says, yes, I'm going to send you back to go rebuild the city of Jerusalem, he didn't delay. He didn't make up excuses. He didn't say, oh, this is a bad time, or, oh, the money's just not good right now. Wait till the economy turns around. He delivered. He delivered on what he said. And that was a huge plus towards his leadership credit. The third thing I think that is really important about Cyrus is that he did not allow there to be divisions between leaders and his teams. He was really big on making sure that if there was internal conflict inside of his empire, that was settled, that was handled. And so we see this in the rebuilding of Jerusalem, where the leaders of Israel, they were rebuilding everything, and the local Persian authorities were like, well, we don't like that you're rebuilding everything because everybody's busy working for you and they're not busy, you know, feeding me grapes and fanning me. And so, and they were like, I don't even know if I want Jerusalem rebuilt, because then what if you guys get all uppity and decide to take back the city? And so what those leaders, the Persian leaders, did is they badmouthed the Israelites back to Cyrus, and they threatened the Israelites saying, if you guys don't knock it off, then we are going to, we're going to badmouth you to the king, and he's going to take away all your stuff. And so what the Israelites did is they prayed. They said, God, you know our integrity. You know that we're doing this for you, that we're not doing anything wrong. And so they sent a letter to Cyrus and said, listen, this is what's going on. This is what they're saying. And Cyrus, he did not like division between his leaders. He liked people to work on teams. And so he sent out a delegation, quote unquote, to go in and mediate, and they fixed that conflict. And so he wasn't, I guess the easy way to say this was, he wasn't He didn't cause drama, and he didn't like drama. He didn't suffer any drama to live. Does that make sense?
Are you saying the word suffer in like the biblical sense, meaning to allow?
Yeah,
He didn't
that's what
suffer
I
it
mean.
to. He didn't suffer it to. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, that's very good. I really appreciate that you translate that for me, because sometimes I speak a little King Jamesy.
It's okay. It lends to the authenticity. Well, that's a lot of food for thought for anybody that has been contemplating what to do here. Maybe you haven't gotten out and done any early voting because you're still waiting for this debate that's happening tomorrow. Maybe you're on the fence, or maybe you just want a little more confidence when you're going to the ballot box. But Pastor Bob, those two guys seem like a really interesting kickoff. For anybody that's interested to hear about the other two guys, we're probably going to put another video out shortly thereafter. So make sure you look for it and check it out. Please comment and leave some likes in the box below. Tell your friends what we're doing and see if anybody else needs what we're given. Pastor Bob, how about a sign off?
I think one of the things that's in common between these guys is that they shared the fruits of their victory generously. They celebrated the wins that happened. They were the kind of leaders who ran out front. And so I want to encourage you to share in the triumph that here in America, we can vote. That is a generous thing, that we can vote. And I think the good thing is that we should share in that liberty that we have, and we should go out, and we should be the kind of people who lead from the front and go out and show people that in America we have this beautiful freedom. Let's go out and use it. Let's go out and exercise it. Listen, if you're conflicted about what's going on, use the Bible as a guide. Read the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Read the book of Daniel. Check them out. See what's going on in there, because I think that from my perspective, I really do feel like the church is in exile here. We used to be at home here in America, but now every game that we play feels like an away game. And so since we have this kind of exiled feeling, I would suggest reading those books where the church is in exile, and ask yourself, how do they do? What do they do? Where do they go? What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And let the Bible be your guide. Gio, thanks for the topic. You're amazing. Hit subscribe, hit likes, hit the notification bell, so that
help us get the word out.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right, that was great. Are you ready to do the other two guys now, or did you plan to do them next week?
Next week, if I could, on those two guys, because I'm rereading the books as I'm doing it.
Yeah, no
but
problem.
You want to do one off?
Yeah, let's do a one-off, but hold on, I want to just think real quick. You got a lot of really good material on that one. That was really good.
Trying to up my game for you.
Oh, you constantly do. That was really good. Came up with a bunch of good tags for this one. Okay, let's take a look here. Okay, I got one. And if you would prefer to do it another time, we can, but here's one. I'm not married to it. So this one started, well, here, I'll do it like we're recording it just in case. Okay.
Okay. Because it might be genius.
Yeah. So this one started in a conversation that I was having. I'm in the church's men's group, and so we, periodically they'll meet. We were doing Zooms for a while, and this one came from a really good friend of mine who's also part of the faith community. The idea of being present was what we were talking about, and it started with a conversation because of we were making references to, I think it's not only is it a book, I believe it's a series or like a class called Whisper. And
yeah.
Where the concept you learn throughout the book is that God speaks to you in the quietest of times, and his voice is a whisper. It's not a loud one, so you really got to listen. It started there, the conversation started there, and then it went my buddy Ryan, then it went to him really trying to apply that quietness to his life and be present. And he said, I've always had, I said, I've always had a problem, a challenge with, being present, remaining present. And it really got me thinking, one of the luxuries that I give myself from time to time is the ability to be so present that I actually forget time for a little bit. Like I'll go a couple days in a row and I won't really know, is it October 19th, 20th? I don't know. And it's because I'm so present in those moments that time really doesn't matter. And so I started giving it more thought, and I was thinking that those times that it's happened, and the best times to really do that is your family time, or even if you're able to take a vacation nowadays, a family vacation is another great time. But it kind of got me thinking, Pastor Bob, and I wanted to throw the idea at you. But the art of being present. What does the Bible and Jesus teach us about being present? How important is it, and how do where do we see it in the Bible, and how can we practice it? How do we bring it to life?
I would say that the greatest portion of the Bible is trying to get us to realize God's gracious presence here with us while we're on earth. The Bible starts with the presence of God in creation, and then from there we mess it up. We push God away. We become enemies of God. And the rest of the Bible's story is God pushing into our lives, into our human history, into the human story. And he's either pushing in moments of correction or pushing in moments of care. And so it's this constant narrative about the presence of God, either in correction or care in the life of his people. And you could do the whole Bible story just this way, but because I want to spare us on the time, I would say that there is two really good examples. One is the Israelites when they were in slavery. They were wondering, where is God? And God shows up. And his nearer presence corrected the Egyptians for believing that Yahweh God was inferior and their gods were greater. It also corrected the slaves' understanding that God didn't care about them and was disinterested in them and wouldn't save. And then the great care that he had in delivering his people from slavery into the promised land. That's the first big story. But even that's just a precursor for the best story ever, which is that God became present with us in the person of Jesus Christ.
Needed to
God,
be here. Needed to be here with us. Yeah. What a better way to be present.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, it's a good one.
Think about it. God, in order to be present with humanity, allowed himself to be born as an infant. God allowed himself, in his desire to be present with us, allowed himself to be carried in the arms of Mother Mary, to be present in the mundane lives. I got to believe that Jesus was just having fun with his disciples as well. He was joking with them. He was cracking jokes with them. Then he was literally
He was human,
hanging out with them. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the best story of all, is that God was present with us at every point in life where it didn't get at us. And then he did one better. He said, I'm going to be present with you in your darkest hour, which is death itself. And I'm going to be present in this way. I'm going to be there in your death, taking you from death to eternal life, so you can be present with me eternally in heaven. I mean, boom, mind blown. Like the whole Bible's about presence, right?
It's all about presence, yeah.
It's all about presence. And so...
Yeah. Wow, that's great, Pastor Bob.
I want to share a story, if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
It took me a long time to learn about the power of presence, because I thought that a quantity of being present with people was the same thing as being present with them in a qualitative way. And I thought that I was doing good as a pastor when I was making a lot of calls, but really short period of time calls, and just like getting it done calls, like, hey, good to see you calls, instead of qualitative calls. And it really changed for me when I met a lady named Shirley Jones. Shirley Jones was the most wild, cantankerous little old lady I'd ever met. And I've met a lot of little old ladies.
Cantankerous.
She was cantankerous, man. But I met her when she was in a rehab hospital. And I was the brand new pastor, and my friend who was the associate pastor was taking me around, and he was showing me everybody, where everybody was at. When we walked in the door, the first thing she said was, "Took you long enough to get here." The first thing she did was scold me and Dan for not seeing her. Now, I had never met her before in my life, so like our introduction was a scold. But what I realized as I was meeting with her, because Dan says, listen, she'll expect you to visit her every single day. And I thought to myself, oh, that's really sad. That really breaks my heart, But what I found out when I was meeting with her is that the reason why she was so upset is because people would just visit her and say hi and leave. Nobody was listening to her. Nobody was valuing her by their presence that kind of way. And so I kept on listening. As I was visiting with her, I kept on listening for something, some angle I could use, right? And towards the end of the conversation, because it had to end, she says, listen, I've done so much for those people at church, and she's scolding me about everybody at church, and she says, and nobody will do so much as even bring me a peanut butter sandwich. And I went, ah. And I said, well, Shirley, I'm really sorry. And I visited her the next day. And guess what I brought with me?
Uncrustable.
I brought her, well, that's funny you should say that. I brought her a peanut butter sandwich. I said, Shirley, I just want you to know that I heard you and that I won't be able to be around all the time, but I want you to know that you're important. So important that I made you one of these.
Oh. And
I handed her a peanut butter sandwich.
Good on you.
Now, she immediately scolded me for it having crust, which I didn't care. But she loved it. She had such a blast with that idea.
That's great.
She felt so valued in that moment, and she felt so heard that I didn't visit her for a month, and she didn't even know.
Oh, wow.
The next time I saw her, guess what I brought with me?
Another peanut butter sandwich with no crust.
Gio, are you still there?
Yeah, a peanut butter sandwich with no crust.
Oh, man.
A peanut butter sandwich with no crust.
That's right. I brought a peanut butter sandwich with no crust, and it's like we picked up just where we left off. You see, she didn't notice the passage of time. What affected her was what happened when we were present together. And that's the key to presence, is working on quality over quantity. And ever since that day, she would call me the peanut butter pastor.
That's awesome. Probably the best.
She told all her friends about
it. Had. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to be present with people, I would say you got a peanut butter sandwich them.
Yeah. Was it grape jelly or strawberry? What would you use?
I'm a strawberry jelly kind of guy because
I like that. I like that. I love a good strawberry jelly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Pastor Bob, for sharing that story with us and for giving us a little bit more and showing us the importance of being present, so much so that Jesus himself decided that the best way to be present was to come down and be one of us and see what he could teach us about being human. Great one-off. And just for everybody that's been watching us, I want you to know that Pastor Bob had no preparation on that one. That was all completely off the cuff. He had no idea I was going to ask him that question. I threw him a curve, and he stepped to the plate, and he hammered it out with a big hashtag peanut butter sandwich. And I just love it. I love it. I love that you can be so present in the topic for us and for your audience that you can easily draw something as great as that out. So kudos to you, and happy Pastors Month, Pastors Appreciation Month to you, Pastor Bob. Everybody should be wishing all your pastors happy Pastor Appreciation Month. Thanks, everybody, for coming and visiting us. Watch some of our other videos and pass them along if you think anybody can use what we're giving.
Thanks, guys. Hey, thanks for the text, too. That was very kind of you.
You're welcome. I hope you did great. Did you see I bet you loved reading all those kids' letters about.
Oh, yeah.
They must have been so fun to just flip through. I'm
sure
half of them didn't even know what was going on, but it seemed like it could be fun for you to
It
something
is.
lighten your day, you know?
It's nice to be appreciated.
Yeah, for sure.